Hello, my name is Abigail and welcome back to Polyglot Progress. It is almost a new year, which means it is time to talk about my language goals and plans for 2021, which I am so excited about. Anyone who's been subscribed to this channel for a while probably knows that I love goal setting and I love reflecting upon my goals once those time frames that I set are done. And this new year I am especially excited because it is a very new kind of new year for me. In past years, I've centered my calendar, my bullet journal, kind of my whole new year around the start of the academic school year, so in the fall, and then I'll have broken that down into semester 1, winter break, semester 2, summer. And this year, for the first time ever in my whole life, I get to go based on the year and have actual quarters based on the months of the year. Which I guess brings me to the first thing I should talk about. I'm splitting my year into quarters. That seems to be the hot thing to do on language YouTube this year. But I've actually known I was going to do this for a little while. I decided probably pretty early on in college that I wanted to kind of switch to kind of a calendar year format for my life after I graduated. So this video is not just going to be about quarter one. I did actually plan out my full year. I like to have kind of a hierarchy with my planning, so you've got the year, the chunk, in this case quarters, and then the month, the week, and then my daily to-do list. So while I have broken my year down into quarters, I'm not actually going to be doing what a lot of other people are doing this year and only planning one quarter at a time. I have planned out my full year and I'm going to talk about my full year, but the thing that is making this a little bit more important here is that I'm going to be replacing the summer goals series with kind of a year-long goals series. So instead of telling you my goals at the start of the summer and then telling you an update each month, I'm going to be talking about my goals for 2021 now, and at the end of each quarter I'll let you know how things are going and what my goals are for the next quarter. I posted another video today that I will link down below talking about my 2020. I talk a lot about how I'm no longer setting language levels as my goals and why I'm kind of focusing a little bit more specifically on certain actions this year. So if you want to take a look at that, you can. I set myself kind of a general theme for this year, and that is integrated and intertwined. This year I'm really focused on building habits with my language learning and my language usage, and even more than that, I want to make using and therefore maintaining and improving my levels through immersion in my languages just a part of my daily life. I want to have speaking or watching or reading things in these languages be something that I just do and I don't really have to think about, and they're just a part of me in my daily life. I talked quite a bit in my 2020 wrap-up video about how I don't learn languages to be a polyglot or to say that I can speak a certain number of languages to a certain level. I learn them so that I can use them, but because I had such an off and on relationship with language learning in college and frequently had to kind of go back and refresh my language level and didn't really have as much time to branch out of the linguistic aspect of language learning and move on to things like culture and immersion and all of those things, I feel like that has been lacking in kind of my language learning. And I've also just noticed that I don't consistently have frequent contact with all of these languages, so I really just want to make it the case where I am using these languages and they're as much a part of my life as English is. And I also want to build out that kind of study habit for the languages that I am at a more beginner level in, so that way I can comfortably immerse myself in the language doing things that I want to be doing every day. So you'll see as I go through specific language plans that I've kind of broken these down into several different categories. There's the languages that I'm focusing on, the languages that I am just kind of maintaining or improving my level through immersion, and then the languages that I'm dabbling in. So with that and my overall kind of focus in mind, I have like an ideal routine that I'd like to see myself getting into. I'm already actually almost there with this, but I would like to see it really kind of implemented in a way where I don't have to get myself to do it. It just kind of happens in my life. So this ideal routine starts off with having at least an hour of study a day. This will be kind of set study time, maybe working through a textbook or using a course online or something like that for one of the languages that I am considering one of my focus languages. There are 4, potentially 5 languages that are going to be focus languages this year. So based on that, that will be kind of what determines what gets that 1 hour study block. In addition to that hour of focus language study time, I want to be spending at least 30 minutes a day doing immersion in another language. So one of the languages that I'm working on maintaining or improving through immersion, I might read a book or watch a movie or listen to a podcast or take an italki lesson. And then the third and final part of this is with a third language, so with a different language than I did immersion for and a different language than I did study for, I want to work on some vocabulary work. I'm picturing this as being like a 15 to 20 minute long activity. I can do it right before bed if I want, I can do it when I wake up. I just want to spend a little bit of time on something like memorize, working on learning some vocabulary, or learning some vocabulary words, writing them down, and then making some sample sentences with them. This is a very small activity, and obviously I'll be picking up vocabulary through watching things, through reading things, through having italki conversations. But I just realized that my biggest weakness when it comes to intermediate languages, so German, Spanish, and Italian for me, is my lack of vocabulary. A lot of what holds me back from saying all the things that I want to say, or reading, or listening to, or watching things and fully understanding them is a lack of vocabulary. So it's really just a small thing that I can fit into my day, and it'll really help out some of those languages a bit and help me to have a better time when I am immersing myself. One of the ways that I am working to kind of intertwine languages with my real life is intertwining my language goals with my just kind of normal life goals. This year, one of my big personal focuses is on my career, so part of that involves a lot more reading and a lot more watching. I set myself the goal of watching 75 films and reading 50 books, which I know is a very quantified number, but it's just to kind of get myself reading more and watching more, because I have said countless times that I want to read more, I want to watch more, and it just doesn't happen. And because I'm trying to intertwine my language learning with my normal life goals, I hope that a lot of the books that I read and a lot of the films that I watch will be things that I am doing for that immersion time and are things that I'm doing in other languages. This is going to help a lot with my language level. I'm going to be exposed to a lot more of the language, and it's also going to help me to pick up some of those more cultural elements that I feel like I've been lacking kind of the past few years with my language learning. So a lot of my focus this year is going to be on speaking, writing to improve my speaking, and then reading books and watching films in my target languages. So to work on improving my speaking, one of the things I'm going to be doing is taking a lot more lessons online or doing a lot more language exchanges. By the end of this year, I hope to have done 50 to 75 language lessons or language exchanges, basically 50 to 75 video calls. Again, I would absolutely love to take more than 75 lessons. I would definitely love to take more than 50, but I just don't know what this next year looks like financially for me. I have paid for some of my lessons for 2021 already, which definitely helps, but my financial situation is currently a little bit up in the air, which does not help so much, and I also am moving next year, which is a costly endeavor. That's actually how you kind of get this perfectly quarterly system, is the first 3 months of the year are going to be me preparing to move, then I'm going to move in the second quarter at the very start, and then I assume settle in, and then I have no idea what the second half of the year looks like. And then my last overall goal for this year is that I want to do some language learning challenges, just little things that I might learn something from or that might inspire me or motivate me to continue with whatever target language I choose to do it in. And now we move on to more specific language goals and plans. So I'm going to start by talking about the 4 definite focus languages throughout the year. Then I'm going to talk about the 2 that I'm working on maintaining and just improving through immersion. Then we're going to move into one that might be a focus. I would really love for it to be a focus. I'm just not sure if it's really going to work out for me this year, and if not, it will be probably a Dabble project. And then I'll talk about the 2 languages that I'm planning to potentially dabble in a little bit this year. But before we get into this, I do just want to say that these are my 2021 goals and plans. So they very well might change as the year goes on. Obviously, if 2020 taught us anything, it's that plans can change. And I think goals can also change. I'm sure that I may end up quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3 scrapping some of these goals and maybe adding in new goals. And then the other thing is that at times looking at all of this, it can start to feel like a lot, but it is going to be spread out over the course of a full year. And also the way that I view goals is that they are goals. They're the ideal. And the only way I can really fail any of these is if I want to do them but decide not to. So I'm going to start out with the 4 definite focus languages, which are going to be Bulgarian, American Sign Language, German, and Spanish. Like I said, there is a 5th possible focus language, but that's going to be the one that I'm a little bit more comfortable not getting to if it doesn't happen. These are not necessarily in any order other than the fact that Bulgarian and American Sign Language, I am entering the year with a beginner, absolute beginner level, and then German and Spanish are already at an intermediate level, so just kind of what I'm doing and what I'm focusing on is a little bit different. My kind of overall goal focus type thing for Bulgarian is that I want to pass my previous highest level in the language, and I'm a little bit iffy about this as a goal. I'm really trying not to set goals based around my language level and instead based around the things that I can do in the languages. And I also really don't want to compare myself to past me, but I feel like I've just been harboring a lot of regret and guilt over the fact that I studied Bulgarian to a decent beginner level back in 2016, and then I put it down when I went to school and only picked it up again really for real back in 2020. It's hard to not think about the progress I could have made in those 4 years. So I would love love to get myself to a point this year where I feel like I am better than I was then, so I don't have any reasons to feel guilty, because not only can I do all the things I could do then, but I'm in a better place. So sure, I could have made progress in those 4 years, but it doesn't really matter because I'm at the best I have ever been right now. And I'd say I'm pretty close to this. Overall, I'd say currently I'm very much so not very conversational. I can't really say enough, and that was one of the things that I could do during Ad 1. I did have a conversation at the end of it, but watching it, I can tell that I'm pretty uncomfortable during that conversation. Not because my speaking partner was making me feel uncomfortable or anything like that. I was definitely straining to hear everything and straining to think of the things that I needed to say back. So by the end of this year, I'd just like to be able to have a conversation in Bulgarian. It can be a very basic conversation. It can be the same length, 15 minutes. It can be honestly even less than 15 minutes. I just want to feel during this conversation that I feel solid in my level and I'm confident in what I'm saying and I feel comfortable speaking and listening to Bulgarian. So the things that I want to do to achieve that and just what I want to be working on in general with my Bulgarian. First, I want to get comfortable talking about the past, the present, and the future, even just on a very basic level. I feel like I still struggle with that a bit now, but that's going to open up a lot for me. I want to complete all of the Bulgarian Pod 101 pathways. I added it up and I think it adds up to be about 25 hours they estimate worth of content. So I think that this can actually be done within the first few months. I would like to finish colloquial Bulgarian. I am right there right now on this pass through. I have gotten further in this book before, but since I started it over again, that's where I am right now. As well as intensive Bulgarian. I'm right there. So I do have quite a ways to go in both of these textbooks, but I'm moving through them a bit quicker as I'm doing the Bulgarian Pod 101 course because it is introducing me to concepts that then are taught in these books. I want to continue listening to the Bulgarian History podcast, which is a podcast in English that I randomly stumbled upon on Spotify. And then my final Bulgarian goal is one that you will see kind of crop up again and again throughout all of these languages, and that is that I want to write one essay or just kind of journal entry in Bulgarian a month. So this can be something like an essay about something I learned in that history podcast, or more likely, because my Bulgarian is at such a basic level, just writing about what I did that day, writing a journal entry, talking about how I'm feeling or what clothes I like to wear, something like that. Just something that will get me practicing my writing. On to the next focus language that I will just be getting started in. Bet you didn't expect to see American Sign Language here. I also didn't. I've wanted to study sign language for a really long time. I feel like it is a really important language for me to know. I have felt kind of hypocritical just kind of studying all of these other languages and not getting around to studying American Sign Language. It's been really kind of difficult because I have been kind of sticking with the same projects and just kind of leaving and coming back these past several years. But it's something that I've wanted to do when I've had the chance to and when I've had access to better resources. I haven't had access to resources that I would really feel comfortable using to learn American Sign Language till now. Basically, I was recently scrolling around on Instagram and Polyglot Erin had shared a post from an organization in Canada called Queer ASL. I looked into it, it seemed perfect for me, and so that's how that came to be. The course is 8 weeks long, it's an hour and a half per class, and it's all of January, all of February, and then it finishes. So my overall goal for sign language is finger spelling and basic interactions. So I want to be able to finger spell pretty comfortably. I do know most of the alphabet currently. I'm very slow and rusty when I do it, so I definitely could use a lot of work with that. I want to feel comfortable finger spelling because I'm sure it's something that I will need a lot along the way of learning sign language. And then when it comes to basic interactions, I want to be able to have like a very basic conversation. I want to be able to introduce myself, which is one of the outcomes of ASL 101, and I want to just be able to ask and answer work-related questions in case I'm ever using it in a work environment. And then my goals that I've currently set for American Sign Language that will probably adapt a little bit and get a little bit more specific as the year goes on. I'd like to complete Queer ASL's ASL 101 and 102. I would love to do all 4 levels that they offer by the end of this year, but I just don't know how many cycles they're going to be doing this year. I don't know if I can afford it, and I don't know what my schedule looks like. The hours that they offer may not work in my schedule as it goes on. So if I can, the big goal would be to do all 4 levels, but at the very least I want to have done 101 and 102. Since I'm doing a lot of kind of 1 diary entry a month in other languages, I wanted to have kind of the equivalent. So even if it's just sitting down and kind of signing to myself, or record a video diary once a month in ASL. And that's it for now for my goals for that. I'm definitely going to add on to those as time goes on. I kind of don't want to set too many other goals until I've started that ASL 101 course. From there, I'm going to kind of figure out what I need to learn to expand my knowledge and what I need kind of in the more immediate future. I am so excited to be focusing on German in 2021. I feel like German is possibly the language I am most excited about my progress in right now. So my focus for German is going to be on politics and culture. Like I said, I have an at least okay knowledge of the Francophone world because I did a degree in it, but I don't feel like that's the case with the German-speaking world. I've been reading the news a bit in German recently, but there's oftentimes things referenced that I don't feel like I fully understand because I don't understand the historical background and I don't really understand how the political system in Germany works or major political figures in Germany. So this year I am definitely going to be focusing more on that. I'm able to kind of get this information through my German learning and through my German immersion. So I would definitely just like to put more of an emphasis on doing that. And like I said, one of my major problems with German and speaking in German is my vocabulary. So that's definitely going to be one of the languages that I put into that kind of slot of improving vocabulary. It's also going to be something that I'm reading quite a bit in and watching quite a bit in, so I will also get some vocab from that, but I definitely just would like to have that little bit of added extra time to kind of look at some vocabulary and then put that into practice through my writing, my speaking, maybe come across it while I'm doing immersion. Speaking of reading, I would like to read the rest of the Percy Jackson series. I'm planning to finish the first book by the end of this year, which will leave me with 4 books, I believe, so I could technically read 1 a quarter, but I have a feeling it'll end up not necessarily being 1 a quarter just because my reading speed is obviously going to increase, my understanding is obviously going to increase as I continue on with it, and there's also the possibility that maybe I don't get to it first quarter or second quarter or something like that. To work on that history, politics, culture aspect, I want to read at least 3 articles or parts of a book or something related to history, politics, or culture a month. So I'm hoping to do that just to A, expand my reading abilities, but also to help me to kind of understand what's going on in the world and specifically what's going on in German-speaking countries. Then for my writing practice for German, I would like to write at least 1 essay a month on just kind of what I've learned, maybe give some opinions, maybe talk about how it connects to other countries around the world, etc. Just get some writing practice and also just kind of distill all the information that I've learned. And finally, I want to watch 1 movie a month in German, so you're gonna see that kind of across the board now from now on in these languages as well. As I try to watch 75 films this year, hopefully more than 75, I would definitely like to be getting to experience some films from the countries that speak my target languages. So I definitely want to watch at least 1 film in German a month. Can be from any German-speaking country. It could maybe be something that's not from a German-speaking country, but in German, but I definitely want to focus it more on things that are coming out of German-speaking countries. It is time to move on to my last definite focus language this year, which is Spanish. Like I said, I am moving this year, and I am moving to a city with a lot of Spanish speakers, and that is very close to the Mexican border, so very close to a Spanish-speaking country. So I really want to prioritize this language this year and really get to a place where I'm really comfortable speaking just day-to-day Spanish. That's definitely my overall goal, is just to feel confident and comfortable speaking my day-to-day Spanish. Output is definitely the big focus for Spanish this year, so I'm going to be taking a lot of italki classes or doing a lot of exchanges, spending a lot of time speaking to myself. So I almost put this one in the category of just kind of improving through immersion, since that's pretty much what I'm going to be doing. But this one really is a focus for me this year. I know that once I move and I'm really exposed to Spanish pretty often, I'm really going to feel motivated and inspired to improve it, which also means I'd like to try to get a head start on that and do as much as I can before I move. And I also have other goals with Spanish, so I really want to spend a lot of time learning about Latin America and the Spanish-speaking world this year, and because I am at an intermediate level and can kind of read through some of those types of things in Spanish, that would definitely be something that I'd like to do. And then in terms of things that I'm going to do to help improve my output specifically, I want to learn how to roll my R's this year. I really have a hard time when it comes to producing phonemes. I talked about this in my French video, and with Spanish it really poses a problem for me because there are different words that sound exactly the same the way that I pronounce them that are totally different words because I can't roll my R. And I also really want to expand my comfort and confidence using tenses while I speak. My written Spanish grammar is okay, and then when it comes to speaking, I am okay with some stuff, but I am just not super comfortable using a lot of tenses yet in Spanish, and when I do use them, I tend to make a lot of mistakes, and so I would just like to improve that just to make it a little bit easier to understand me and also to make it so that I can express more. I also would like to watch 2 movies a month in Spanish, and I want to try to read 3 books over the course of this whole year. I am about halfway through a poetry book in Spanish that I started this year, so that can be one of the things that I read and finish up. And then lastly, for my writing in Spanish, I want to write 1 short essay a month. So those are my 4 focus languages. Those are going to be what get the majority of my time, my energy, my focus this year. Those will probably be what you end up hearing about the most. The only exception to that is if I do manage to get to pull in this 5th language. I'll definitely, of course, talk about the other ones, but those are really going to be what my time and energy and heart and soul is going into, is those 4 and potentially that 5th one. And so next I move on to 2 languages that I'm just working on maintaining my level in, and I guess also improving. That's the great thing about maintaining your level through doing immersion and that sort of thing, is there's no way to turn off learning new vocabulary or improving your grammar or improving your speaking abilities. So that's just gonna naturally happen, but I'm not really going to put emphasis on studying these. These 2 are never really going to have that 1 hour time block unless I'm really feeling like I want to do something in them that day. It's just they're not really going to be my focus this year. I really am just going to kind of keep them in the background and really focus on making them just a natural part of my life so I don't really have to think about it. These 2 are just here. And that is French and Italian. The French one is probably not very surprising. I definitely want to work on continuing to just intertwine that with my life. That's a big goal for French, is just to make it very effortless that it is involved in my life. I can read at the same pace and same level of comprehension in French and English. I can watch things at that same level of comprehension. The only thing that holds me back in my French is my spoken French. So my other big thing is improving my spoken French and my spoken confidence in French. I'm not quite at the place yet where I can just kind of be like, French is in my life, I don't have to think about it, because I'm not very good at doing things in it. So this year, we're fixing that. I'm going to do a whole lot of talking in French. I would like to do some language exchanges, possibly. I would like to just talk to friends that I have that speak French. I would like to maybe take a few italki classes that are centered around preparing for the spoken element of the DALF exam. And then other than that, I'll just have a lot of conversations just to practice speaking. I think it shouldn't be too hard for me to get spoken French into my life in some ways. I just need to put a little bit of effort into getting that to be a habit for me. I really love films from a lot of francophone countries. I feel like a lot of them have really inspired my own work or connect a lot to the kind of things that I want to do in my own work, and honestly that's part of why I want to watch so many films from so many of my target languages countries this year, is I just feel like I have really connected in the past with a lot of cinema from around the world. I don't feel like there's only films in the US being made about the subjects that I want to talk about or telling stories in the ways that I want to tell stories. So it feels like a very weird, narrowed lens to only come at it from that perspective. So I, again, would like to watch 2 movies a month in French. I definitely think I could watch more movies in French, but again, I can go beyond the 2 a month. I just want to also give myself some room in my schedule to be able to watch some films that are American, because there are quite a few I've had recommended to me that I feel like I need to see. And then for reading, I am not setting a certain number of books that I want to read in French, but I would like to read more books in French than I read in English this year. Like I said, I can read at the same speed and level of comprehension in French or in English, so I don't really have a reason to be reading in English other than the fact that it is a little bit easier for me to get books in English than in French here. But again, because I'm moving a few thousand miles, I'm not really buying any physical books this year. So I think for ebooks, it should be pretty much just as easy for me to get a book in French as in English. I just hope that when I look back at 2021 as a whole, no matter how many books I have read, I hope that more of them are in French than are in English. And the other thing that I'm considering doing is maybe just writing my planner or notes to myself or things like that in French. Just kind of doing things that I do on a day-to-day basis in French instead of English. I feel like I can do it and still get the same enjoyment and information out of it. So it really is just kind of replacing my go-to language from English to being French. And then Italian. So I have an intermediate level in Italian. I would still like to be improving my Italian. I just, this year, really don't have any big specific goals for Italian. So at this point, I just kind of want to work on maintaining it and improving it through immersion. I still want to have it in my life. I really want to work much like French with just incorporating it with my day-to-day. Even though I don't have that great of a level, I just feel very comfortable using Italian. So I do still really want to improve it. I just don't have a specific big goal, and it's not going to be one of my focuses this year. I do feel like I need to expand my vocabulary in Italian. That's definitely something that holds me back. So I am going to incorporate it in that vocabulary rotation and hopefully expand the number of things that I can talk about. Other than that, I'd like to take semi-frequent italki lessons. I definitely still want to be using the language. I don't want to lose my level at all. I'd like to improve my speaking abilities again, but I'm just not going to take them as often as I'm taking lessons for my focus languages. I'd also like to watch some TV, watch some movies in Italian, but I'm not setting myself a certain number that I need to watch there because, again, not a focus, not one of my priorities this year. The only kind of quantified things I have for Italian are I would like to read 3 books in Italian, again, just because I want to make sure that I'm doing this immersion. I want to make sure that I'm maintaining my Italian level. And then at the end of each month, I would like to practice my writing, so I'd like to write 1 entry in my journal. And now I move on to the language that may be a focus language, may just be a dabbling project. We'll see how the year goes. And that is Japanese. I have wanted to learn Japanese for so many years. And I feel like it comes together as one of those kind of perfect languages for me to study. I'm interested in music and movies and TV and books from Japan. I'm interested in visiting Japan. I'm interested in Japanese linguistically. I'm interested in the script alone. All of the things kind of come together to make it something that I definitely know that I would like to study and to learn and to use at some point in my life. And I have wanted that point to be the past several years, but because I have been kind of stepping away from my language projects, coming back, I haven't really added any new languages, and so I really wanted to have that year be this year. I still feel like I really want to put a focus on Bulgarian. I don't feel ready to move that to be a project where I'm just immersing myself and working on maintaining my level. I feel like I don't feel comfortable doing that until I'm like an intermediate kind of level, and I am far from that in Bulgarian. And now with starting ASL, I really just want to make sure that I give that the time and attention it needs as well. Plus, I just want to make sure that all of the languages that I am already studying get to be maintained. They are truly my priority. Even Italian, where I just want to work on maintaining my level, that is more of a priority for me right now than pulling in Japanese as a new language. I really just want to make sure that I have this habit and this ease with making sure that all of the languages that I've studied are in my life. I don't want to have a point again where I feel like I haven't touched a language in forever. I really just want all of them to be a part of me and a part of my life. That's always been my goal with languages, and now that I'm out of school, I really feel like I have the chance to make that happen. So if I feel like that is happening and I'm ready to take on a new project, then Japanese will be happening. But otherwise, I am not going to put too much pressure on it. It's going to be something that maybe I do a little bit of this year just for fun and because I'm so interested in it, and get myself excited for next year or whenever I'm able to take it on as a project. I think as it stands currently, I'll probably dabble in it maybe a little bit throughout these first quarters if I feel like I have time in addition to the other projects, and then probably second half of the year is when I could really start to commit to Japanese. And I really do think that that is a possibility. I think that it's a strong possibility that I could do that. It just, again, depends on what my life looks like. I have no idea what job I'll be working, if I'll be working. Hope I'm working. So knowing that, one thing that I really want to learn how to do in Japanese this year, regardless of whether it gets to be something I focus on or not, is learning how to read and write hiragana and katakana. That's one thing where I think even if I can't take Japanese on as a project this year and it's really something that just kind of floats around in the background, I will have time to do. I think I can at least learn the writing systems, and that will set me up to be in a good place to start learning next year. And then if I do decide to pull it in as a focus language, I would just like to learn how to introduce myself and say some basic phrases. I think Japanese is going to be a tough one and a slow one for me. So I'm not really setting myself super high goals. I just really want to start to build some good foundation translations, get myself good pronunciation from the start, which is not necessarily something that's the case in all of these languages. And then if I can focus on it, the goals, again, these are goals, so they may not happen, this is the ideal, would be first to finish this book. This is the Asimil beginner book that I bought in France. It's very basic, but I think it would be a good way to practice writing in hiragana and katakana and also just learn a few new words. I would also like to work my way through Genki 1 and then read an N5 graded reader, because supposedly Genki 1 gets you to an N5 level. Totally gonna depend on when I start learning and if I start learning. I do think that even if I don't focus it on this year, I would like to work on writing. I would like to maybe just learn some vocabulary, just spend some time doing it as a dabbling project if I can't actually commit to it. It will be here in my language life in some capacity. And then finally on to my 2 definite Dabble projects. So these I don't really have goals for, they're dabbling projects, so that kind of defeats the purpose. For me, dabbling is just kind of a thing that I do separate from wanting to make progress in my languages. I might progress in these languages, but they're not something that I'm really focusing on making progress in. They're definitely something that I just do for fun. And eventually I would like to take one of these seriously, but for now it's a dabbling project. So Scottish Gaelic, we all know about. That's the one that I would eventually like to take seriously. I probably will work on some phonetics stuff and figuring out how to read a little bit better. I'm not great with reading yet, and probably just continuing with basics. I don't know very much Scottish Gaelic, but that's because it's a dabbling project, and honestly I didn't do very much with it this past year at all. And then the other one is Esperanto. So Esperanto was actually the second language other than English that I learned to a level where I could converse in it, but I put it down. I decided I didn't really want to focus on it or even really work on maintaining it anymore several years ago. I can still understand a lot of written and spoken Esperanto when I'm exposed to it. I just can't produce anything. And I'm pretty sure that the only reason that I can really comprehend Esperanto is the few words that I remember, and then just the fact that I've studied German and 3 Romance languages, so I kind of have a pretty good feel of what's happening. The reason that this one has been pulled up as a dabbling project this year, instead of just not being mentioned at all like it has for the past few years, is that I discovered that Duolingo updated the Esperanto course, and I no longer have the little Duolingo Al trophy. And I don't know why, because I don't really use Duolingo all that much, but I feel like I have to have the little Al trophy for all of the languages that I've studied. So I want to finish the Duolingo Esperanto tree. So Esperanto, might do some of it, might not. It's definitely not a priority. So those are my 2021 language goals and plans and hopefully habits that I would like to form. Just before I end this video, I do want to talk about what I'm specifically planning to do for Q1. Like I said, I am moving right at the start of Q2, like literally a few days into Q2. So Q1 is really just dedicated to preparing to move and living the last chapter of my life on the East Coast. I have a feeling it's going to be a very busy quarter, and yet also potentially the quarter I'll have the most time to do language stuff during. One of the big things for this quarter is definitely going to be just getting that kind of routine that I'm hoping for in place, so making sure that I'm blocking out time to study, spending a little bit of time working on expanding my vocabulary in languages, and then just maintaining and immersing myself in the languages as well each day. In order to stay on track, I should watch 15 movies this quarter, read 12 books, which sounds like a lot, but I did read actually about 12 books in that span of time last year. I just didn't really read anything afterwards. And I should also have 15 calls where I can practice my languages. So 15 italki lessons or exchanges or whatever. I would also like to do a language challenge this quarter. I'm thinking that I'm going to do the 40 hours 7 days language challenge at some point in January, just to kind of see the pockets in my day where I can kind of fit some of that immersion and just kind of help me to build that habit and routine of using my languages. I also could see myself really not having as much time for language stuff during the beginning of Q2 when I'm moving. So doing something that's kind of heavy during Q1, I feel like will just help me to feel like I've made a little bit of progress before I have to take that break, or just lessen the load a little bit. And I also feel like it's just a good way to start the new year to help me accomplish some of my goals or make a lot of progress in them just as the year is starting. Moving back through specific languages, my focus during this first quarter is definitely going to be Bulgarian and ASL as kind of like a joint focus. I'd also really like to put quite a bit of focus on German this quarter as well, but the two priorities are definitely going to be Bulgarian and ASL. For Bulgarian, I would actually like to accomplish most of my goals that I set for the year during the first quarter, so I hope to get through all of the Bulgarian Pad 101 pathways, which should also help me with talking about the past, the present, and the future. I would also like to finish colloquial Bulgarian, and I'd like to at least have made progress in intensive Bulgarian. I don't know if I'm gonna finish that one this quarter, but I would like to make quite a bit of progress, so hopefully there will be a lot of Bulgarian this quarter. For ASL, I'm going to be taking ASL 101 for the first 2 months of the quarter, so that should help me with the finger spelling, should help me with being able to introduce myself. I'm not really setting any other ASL goals currently for the quarter. For now, my thing is just put a lot of effort, put a lot of energy into taking that ASL course and really getting as much out of it as I can and doing as well as I can in the class and in the homework. For German, I'm going to work on expanding my German vocabulary. I'd like to read another one of the Percy Jackson books, so book 2. I should have read 9 articles to keep up with my 3 a month, and I should have written 3 entries in my journal to keep up with my 1 a month. For Spanish, I want to start working on how to roll my R's. I think the earlier I get started with that in the year, the better. I want to start working on increasing my vocabulary and working on my tenses. I also should have watched 6 movies by the end of this quarter, and I think I want to try to finish that poetry book as well. I also should have written 3 essays in my notebook. So for French and Italian, I want to take a lesson a month probably for both of those, so definitely since each of those are going to be a lesson a month, I want to be doing a little bit more for Spanish and German. I also should watch 6 movies in French, and because I want to be reading more in French than in English, hopefully I'll have read, I guess, a few books in French. If I'm trying to read 12 books by the end of this quarter, I definitely need to get reading, so I guess I should have read quite a few of those in French, and I also should start just kind of writing notes to myself, bullet journaling, whatever it is I end up doing in French in my daily life starting this quarter. Other than the 1 lesson a month in Italian, I should hopefully have just been reading a little bit, watching a little bit, doing a bit to immerse myself in it. I also should have written 3 entries in my journal by the end of this quarter. And then Japanese, I think, is definitely going to be more of a dabbling project this quarter. If anything, I may actually get started with the script this quarter. I do just have such a strong desire to start learning Japanese, so I may just kind of satiate that a little bit. I don't necessarily plan to do that. I'm not holding myself to it in any sort of way or fashion, and similarly, no kind of set hold myself to it goals for Scottish Gaelic or Esperanto. I will update you on how all of that has gone, either at the end of March or start of April. It'll be definitely a little bit interesting to see when I check in with that, definitely, because I will be fully in the process of moving at that point. As always, I would really love to know what you are planning to do this year, and if you're splitting your year into quarters or only planning 1 quarter at a time, what you're planning to do this quarter. If you're learning or have learned any of the languages I'm studying this year, I would love any resources or advice or tips or tricks that you can give me. Thank you so much for coming along with me on this journey in 2020 where I kind of came back to language learning. I am so excited to get a full year of posting on Polyglot Progress where I don't have to take a break because of the school year. 2020 has been rough, and I'm really glad that you all are still here with me and you're along for this journey as I learn all of these languages. I really appreciate all of you, and I hope you all have a really great new year. I will be back on Wednesday with a Q&A, and until then, remember, practice makes progress.